Let me ask you something. Have you ever walked into a room and felt like every single eye was on you? Like somehow everyone could see the worry on your face, the stain on your shirt, the awkward stumble in your step. You convinced yourself they were whispering, judging, laughing, when in reality, most people didn't even look up from their phones. Here's the truth. They weren't watching you. They were watching themselves. And that realization will set you free. We live our lives as if there's a camera crew following us, as if every misstep will be replayed on a giant screen for everyone to critique. But the world isn't watching you like that. The world is watching itself. What you're experiencing is called the spotlight effect. And it's not just in your imagination. Psychologists have studied this. You overestimate how much people notice your flaws, your mistakes, your every move. But the truth, most people are too caught up in their own worries to focus on yours. Let me tell you a story. When I first started public speaking, I was terrified. I'd prepare for hours, obsess over my outfit, rehearse every word until it lost meaning. One day, before a big event, I spilled tea all over the front of my shirt. I was mortified. I thought, there goes my credibility. Everyone will be staring at the stain instead of listening to what I have to say. You know what happened? Nothing. Not a single person mentioned it. In fact, after the talk, people came up to me and said, that really resonated, or I needed to hear that today. No one saw the stain because they weren't looking for flaws, they were listening for value. You see, we think the world is watching us through a microscope, but it's not. It's watching itself through a mirror. Now, let's look at this scientifically. In a famous psychological experiment, students were asked to wear an embarrassing Barry Manilow t-shirt into a room full of strangers. They were convinced that at least half the room would notice. But guess what? Only about 20% did. That means 80% of people didn't even care enough to notice something you thought was glaringly obvious. Why? Because they were thinking about their own shirt, their own flaws, their own internal spotlight. This is the truth most people ignore. You are not being judged nearly as much as you think. The audience you imagine in your mind doesn't even exist. The people you're trying to impress, they're trying to impress someone else. So many of us live trapped in cages of imagined judgment. We shrink our dreams because we fear someone might criticize them. We water ourselves down because someone might misunderstand us. We stay silent when we want to speak because we're afraid of what they'll think. But what if they're not even thinking about you? That coffee stain you're panicking about, someone else is too busy hiding their broken nail. That mispronounced word you're replaying in your mind, someone else is obsessing over the email they sent with a typo. Everyone's walking around with their own private fears, convinced they're the ones being watched. You are not alone in your anxiety, but you are unique in your ability to break free from it. Here's the shift. Stop chasing approval from people who don't even know themselves. Stop performing for people who wouldn't show up if you fell. Stop editing your life for people who aren't even paying attention. And this one's big. Stop confusing someone else's opinion with your own reflection. Just because someone said something doesn't mean it's true. Just because someone might say something doesn't mean you need to change who you are. I want you to imagine this with me. What if you walked into a room knowing no one was judging you? What if you wore what you loved, said what you meant, and moved with purpose, not performance? What if you showed up not to be seen, but to serve, to shine, to grow? Because here's the paradox. The less you care about what people think, the more you're free to become someone worth noticing. We live in a world of filters and facades, but the ones who stand out aren't the ones trying to be seen. They're the ones brave enough to be real, to be flawed, to be human. That's where real confidence is born, not from perfection, but from presence. Now, let me tell you something else. You're not here to be a mirror for other people's insecurities. You're not here to mold yourself into a version of acceptable that keeps everyone else comfortable. You're here to evolve. You're here to grow. You're here to speak truth even when your voice shakes. And the moment you realize the spotlight was never real, that's the moment you stop shrinking. That's the moment you start living. So the next time your inner critic whispers, they're all watching you, you look that thought in the eye and say, good, let them watch me rise. Because now you know nobody's thinking about you as much as you think. And even if they are, it doesn't matter. You weren't born to be liked. You were born to be true. Thought-provoking question. What dream have you been shrinking because you thought someone was watching? Call to action. If this message helped you break free from fear, let me know in the comments. Like this video so we can reach more people trapped in invisible spotlights. And don't forget to subscribe if you're ready to step out of fear and into freedom. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being on this journey. And remember, I'm in your corner always. Let me say something that might sting a little. You being busy doesn't mean you're being useful. It just means you're occupied. And if we're being honest, a lot of us are busy on purpose because being busy makes us feel important, because stillness makes us feel guilty, because if we slow down, we might have to confront the truth. We don't always know what we're really doing this for. There's a myth in our culture, a lie we've all swallowed without question, that the more you do, the more you matter. That if your calendar is full, your life must be meaningful. That if you're not running around, you must be falling behind. But let me tell you something I wish I knew before I turned 30. Busyness is not a badge of honor, and exhaustion is not evidence that your life matters. In fact, most people confuse movement with progress. They confuse effort with impact. But just because your feet are moving doesn't mean your life is. Let me paint the picture. You wake up, you're checking your emails before your feet even hit the floor. You skip breakfast, but not your notifications. Your meetings run into each other like dominoes. You've got 5 tabs open in your brain and 30 on your laptop. You eat lunch while replying to texts. You answer calls while walking between appointments. You end the day with a to-do list that's longer than the one you started with. And you collapse into bed thinking, I was so busy today, but why does it feel like I didn't actually do anything? Because you didn't move the needle. You spun the wheel, and there's a big difference. You were active, but not aligned. You were moving, but not meaningfully. You were working hard, but not necessarily working well. We've been taught to worship effort. Psychologists call this the effort heuristic. It's the belief that if something takes more time, more sweat, more struggle, it must be more valuable. But that's not always true. In one study, participants were shown 2 identical pieces of artwork. One was labeled created in 4 hours. The other, created in 26 hours. Guess which one they rated as more beautiful? The same painting, but because it took longer, people assumed it had more worth. We do this with our own work too. We think the longer we suffer, the more we deserve. We think the more we sacrifice, the more we'll be seen. We think if we just stay up later, grind harder, and burn out faster, we'll win. But what if you don't need to work longer? What if you just need to work clearer? Let me ask you something. Do you measure your worth by how full your calendar is? Do you feel guilty when you rest, even when you're exhausted? Do you confuse a packed schedule with a purposeful life? It's time to shift that mindset. Here's the new truth. Your value isn't found in your hours. It's found in your impact. So stop asking, how hard did I work today? Start asking, what did my work actually do today? Did it help someone? Did it move me closer to who I want to become? Did it align with my purpose or just drain my energy? Because nobody's handing out awards for most overwhelmed. Nobody remembers how many hours you stared at a screen, but they will remember what you built. They'll remember the change you sparked. They'll remember how you made them feel. I remember coaching someone who worked 14-hour days, non-stop meetings, constant stress. She wore her busyness like a trophy. Until one day she broke down and said, I don't even know what I'm doing this for anymore. She was winning at work but losing herself because busyness had become her identity. Listen, there is nothing wrong with working hard, but if you're only working hard and not working smart, you're trading your soul for a spreadsheet. Let me give you a metaphor. Imagine someone digging a hole in the ground with their hands. They're sweating, exhausted, and proud of their work, but right next to them is a shovel. And a few steps away is the blueprint of where they should be digging. That's most of us. We're busy, but we're not strategic. We're exhausted, but we're not fulfilled. So what do? First, define the outcome. What are you really trying to build? If you don't know the destination, every road looks productive. Second, simplify your effort. Stop glamorizing overcomplication. Busy doesn't mean better. Better means better. Third, protect your time like your life depends on it. Because it does. You can make more money, you can build new connections, but you can't manufacture more time. Every yes you say to someone else's urgency is a no to your own growth. Let's get practical. Do less with more intention. Block your calendar for deep focus instead of shallow replies. Don't just do things right, do the right things. And stop apologizing for slowing down. Stillness isn't laziness, it's leadership. You're not here to be busy. You're here to be brilliant, to be effective, to be impactful. So take the pressure off your hours, put it on your outcomes. If your life is a garden, busyness is like watering everything without knowing what you planted. Productivity is planting seeds, nourishing them, and knowing why they matter. You don't need to hustle yourself into the ground. You need to align your energy with your intention. Because the truth is this, you can burn out doing meaningless things. You can be overwhelmed and underwhelmed at the same time. You can be successful to the world and completely lost inside. So slow down, strip back the noise, delete the distractions, and get clear on what actually matters. Because productivity isn't about doing more, it's about doing what matters most. And once you know what that is, you'll stop racing. You'll start rising. Let me tell you something that most people don't talk about enough. You will outgrow people and they will outgrow you. And that is not betrayal. It is evolution. We tend to think friendship is supposed to last forever. That if a connection fades, it must mean something went wrong. That if someone drifts from your life, it must be because you messed up or they did. But here's the truth. Sometimes people are in your life for a season, not a lifetime. And that's okay. You see, as you grow, your values shift, your vision sharpens, your priorities realign, and the people who matched your old self may not match your new one. That's not disloyalty. That's alignment. Let me take you back for a moment. In your 20s, your social life is everywhere. You've got group chats lighting up, your phone, Friday night plans you barely remember saying yes to, work friends, college friends, gym friends. You're collecting people like it's currency. But as you get older, something shifts. Suddenly your time feels sacred. Your energy feels precious. And being around people just to avoid being alone starts to feel like noise instead of nourishment. It's not that you've become antisocial. It's that you've become intentional. There's actually a scientific explanation for this. It's called socio-emotional selectivity theory. Research has found that as people age or even just perceive that their time is more limited, they stop investing in quantity and start prioritizing quality. The wild nights out get replaced by quiet dinners with people who see you. The big parties fade and the one-on-one conversations become your favorite. And that isn't failure. That's wisdom. Now, here's where most of us get it wrong. We assume that when we lose friends, something must be broken. But losing friends as you grow is not a red flag. It's often the evidence that you're evolving. Think about a tree. As it grows taller, the old branches fall away, not because they were bad, but because they served their season. They helped get you where you needed to be, and now it's time for new branches to grow. Your relationships work the same way. Some people were your lifeline in your 20s. They held your hand through heartbreak. They showed up to your birthday parties. They listened when you doubted yourself. But as you stepped into a new version of you, a version that's more self-aware, more purpose-driven, more focused on growth, those same friendships may have started to feel out of sync. It's not about arrogance. It's about alignment. Let's break this down clearly. A friendship isn't healthy just because it's long. Loyalty isn't about holding on forever. It's about showing up truthfully while you're in each other's lives. Growth doesn't require guilt. Some of the most painful breakups we go through aren't romantic. They're friendship breakups. They're the friends you thought you'd grow old with, but instead you grew apart. They're the people you once told everything, but now the conversation feels surface level, strained, or even silent. And here's what I want to tell you. You don't have to hate someone to let them go. You don't have to wait for a dramatic betrayal. Sometimes the most honest thing you can do is release the relationship without resentment, because when you grow, your circle has to evolve too. Let me give you a truth that changed the way I saw friendships forever. The people who got you here may not be the ones who get you there, and that's okay. It doesn't mean you're better. It doesn't mean they're worse. It means your journeys are moving in different directions. You can love someone deeply and still know they no longer belong in your daily life. You can be grateful for the memories and still honor your need for deeper alignment. You can forgive someone and still choose distance as an act of self-respect. Here's what I've learned. A small circle that challenges you to grow is better than a large one that keeps you stagnant. A friend who tells you the truth is better than one who tells you what you want to hear. A friend who celebrates you in private is more valuable than one who only claps in public. So if your circle is shrinking right now, if you're finding that old connections don't feel the same, don't panic. Don't shame yourself. Don't assume you're broken. You're just shifting into alignment. And this is where identity transformation begins, because who you surround yourself with will determine who you become. It's not just about having people around. It's about having the right people around. People who speak to your growth, not your guilt. People who fuel your faith, not your fear. People who don't flinch when you evolve. You know what real friendship looks like? Someone who claps when you level up, even if they haven't yet. Someone who doesn't shame your silence, but respects your space. Someone who grows beside you or cheers you on from a distance if that's what's needed. Now, I want you to ask yourself this, honestly. Who in your life drains your energy but gets a free pass because of history? Who supports your past self but struggles with your growth? Who are you holding on to out of guilt, not alignment? And here's the biggest one. Who are you becoming? And who around you celebrates that version? Because that's who you keep close. That's who deserves your time, your space, your story. So to anyone struggling with friendships fading, know this. It's not betrayal. It's transformation. You're not meant to stay the same. And neither are your relationships. Some people walk with you for a season, some for a chapter, and a rare few for the whole book. Be grateful for them all. But don't be afraid to turn the page. Because the people who are meant for your future will not cling to your past. They'll meet you where you are and walk with you where you're headed. Let's start with this uncomfortable truth. If you're waiting to feel motivated, you'll be waiting forever. So many people come up to me and say, Jay, I just need more motivation. They believe motivation is the missing ingredient, that once they feel inspired, then they'll get fit, then they'll start the business, then they'll change their life. But the problem is, motivation is like the weather. It comes and goes. It's unstable. It's inconsistent. You can't build your future on something that disappears the moment your mood shifts. Let me offer you a better strategy. Not the one that feels good. The one that works. Discipline. Not the kind of discipline that comes from punishment. Not the rigid, joyless, robotic kind. I'm talking about the discipline that comes from design. Discipline is not about pushing harder, it's about preparing smarter. You see, we think discipline means forcing ourselves to do hard things all the time. But real discipline is about removing the need to force at all. It's about designing your life so that the right decision becomes the easy decision. It's about setting your environment up so that success becomes the default, not the miracle. Let me tell you something I do every single day. Before I go to sleep, I lay out my clothes for the next morning. It's a small habit, but it reduces one decision. That's one less opportunity to overthink, one less excuse. Why does that matter? Because of something called decision fatigue. Science shows that every single choice we make throughout the day drains our willpower. From what to wear, to what to eat, to what to reply in a text, it all chips away at your energy. By the time it's 6 p.m., you're mentally bankrupt. That's why you skip the gym. That's why you order takeout. That's why you scroll instead of study. You're not weak, you're just depleted. So what do successful people do? They automate the small things so they have energy for the real things. Barack Obama famously wore only two suit colors as president. Steve Jobs wore the same black turtleneck every day, not because they didn't care, but because they cared too much about where their energy actually went. Discipline is not about saying no all the time. It's about saying yes to systems that protect your energy. And here's what's wild. The more you rely on discipline, the less you need motivation. Motivation is reactive. It waits for the mood. Discipline is proactive. It builds the mood. Let's take fitness as an example. Motivation says, I'll go for a run if I feel like it. Discipline says, my shoes are by the door. My route is mapped. I'm going no matter how I feel. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is architectural. You can't live your life based on how you feel in the moment because your feelings lie. Your feelings are shaped by sleep, by stress, by hormones, by headlines. They're real, but they're not always right. So let me ask you something. What are you waiting to feel motivated for? What have you put off because the vibe wasn't right? That dream in your heart, the one you keep postponing until you feel ready, is never going to happen if you're always waiting for motivation to visit. Because here's the kicker. Motivation doesn't come before action. Action creates motivation. You don't wait to feel like writing the book. You write one messy paragraph and then the spark shows up. You don't wait to feel confident enough to start the business. You make the first awkward phone call and then the courage kicks in. We've got it backwards. We think we need a wave of inspiration to do something great. But greatness comes from structure, not spark. Let me make this practical for you. Start laying out your clothes the night before. Prep your meals on Sunday. Block your calendar for deep work sessions. Turn off notifications. Leave your phone in another room. Set alarms not just for waking up, but for when to start the thing you've been avoiding. This isn't about being rigid. It's about being ready. So when your emotions try to sabotage you, your systems save you. I'll give you another metaphor. Your dream is a destination. Motivation is a scooter, fast, fun, but breaks down often. Discipline is a train. It may take time to get moving, but once it does, it's unstoppable. Rain or shine, highs or lows, the train keeps moving. And here's the most beautiful part. Discipline leads to freedom. People think discipline is about restriction, but it's the opposite. Discipline frees you. It frees you from indecision. It frees you from regret. It frees you from being a slave to your emotions. When you're disciplined, you don't have to negotiate with yourself every morning. You just move. You just go. You just grow. So if you want to transform your life, stop hunting for motivation. Start building discipline. Because the person who's committed will always outperform the person who's inspired. The one who gets results isn't the one who felt the most hype. It's the one who showed up even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. So today, design your life to make the right choices automatic. Make discipline your lifestyle, not your last resort. Because motivation might help you start, but discipline is what helps you finish. Let's have a real conversation. How many times have you felt fear rise in your chest before anything actually went wrong? You're not in danger. No one's attacking you, but your heart races, your palms sweat, you can't breathe, and your brain whispers, this must mean something terrible is about to happen. But what if I told you that fear you feel, it's not about now, it's about then. Most of the fears holding you back today aren't about your present. They're echoes from your past. You're not afraid of what's in front of you. You're afraid of what once was behind you. Let me break this down. Imagine a child who was laughed at for reading aloud in class. Fast forward 15 years now, they're in a meeting, being asked to present. Their throat tightens. Their knees go weak. They say, I'm terrified of public speaking. But the truth is, they're not scared of this moment. They're still stuck in that classroom, in that embarrassment, in that memory. You see, the brain doesn't just store facts, it stores feelings. And when something hurts you, especially deeply, your brain doesn't file it away neatly. It tags it, it labels it, danger, don't go there again. So now, anytime something even resembles that situation, your nervous system hits the panic button. This is called emotional memory encoding. It's your amygdala, the brain's fear center, doing its job. But often, it's working too hard. It's protecting you from a danger that's no longer real. Think about this. An elephant can be tied down with a small rope, not because the rope is strong, but because the elephant remembers being trapped when it was young. Even though it could break free now, it doesn't try, because its memory is stronger than its muscles. And that's exactly what most of us are doing. We've been hurt. We've failed. We've been rejected. And now we think that fear is truth, but it's not. It's a memory. You're not afraid of love. You're afraid of heartbreak. You're not afraid of taking risks. You're afraid of that time you failed. You're not afraid of speaking up. You're afraid of the silence that followed the last time you did. So here's the question I want you to start asking when fear shows up. Is this fear about now, or am I carrying it from back then? Because once you realize you're being haunted by old echoes, you can start turning the volume down. And I get it, fear feels so real in the body. It's not just mental, it's physical. You feel it in your chest, your gut, your hands. But here's what's powerful. Neuroscience shows that fear responses triggered by emotional memory are often 2 to 3 times stronger than fear from new, present moment danger. Why? Because your brain is overcorrecting, trying to protect you from something that's already happened. So how do you deal with it? You stop treating fear like a signal of truth and start treating it like a message from the past. Let me give you an example. When I started making videos, I was terrified, not of speaking, but of judgment. I remembered all the times I was misunderstood. I remembered the criticism, the mockery, and every time I picked up the camera, my body went into panic. Until one day, I realized I wasn't scared of speaking. I was scared of being seen, because being seen meant being vulnerable, and vulnerability once hurt me. But I was no longer that teenager. I was no longer powerless. And the people watching me now, they weren't the ones who judged me then. That's when I stopped letting my past write the script for my future. And you can do the same. Here's how. First, identify the root. When fear rises, pause and ask, where did this start? What memory is this connected to? Second, reframe it. You're not broken. You're not weak. You're human. And your fear is trying to help even if it's unhelpful. Third act anyway. Fear loses its power when you move through it. Not when you feel ready, but when you decide you're done being ruled by ghosts. Because here's the painful truth. Most people are living a future that's still controlled by their past. They're avoiding opportunities because of one bad experience. They're rejecting love because of one betrayal. They're silencing their voice because of one rejection. But how many doors will you keep slamming shut just because one time, one person hurt you? At some point, you have to stop letting the wound win. Stop letting the breakup from 5 years ago block the love that's here now. Stop letting the failure at 22 make you quit your dreams at 32. Stop letting the opinion of one person rewrite your whole identity. Your fear might be loud, but you are stronger than its story. And here's what's really exciting. Every time you act in spite of fear, you rewire your brain. You teach your nervous system, this is not a threat anymore. And slowly that panic starts to fade because fear isn't your enemy. Avoidance is the more you avoid, the more power you give it. The more you face it, the more truth you gain. Fear will always be part of life, but it doesn't have to drive the car. Let it sit in the passenger seat. Let it whisper. But you hold the wheel. You're not that kid anymore. You're not in that moment anymore. You're not powerless anymore. And the fear you're feeling, it's not a prophecy. It's just a memory. So when fear rises, say this out loud. This is not then. This is now. I am not who I was. I am who I choose to become. And then take the next step forward, even if your knees shake, even if your voice trembles, even if your heart pounds. Because growth doesn't happen in the absence of fear. It happens in the presence of fear. When you walk forward anyway, you've lived long enough in the shadows of your past. It's time to step into the light of your becoming. We've all said it. I just need more willpower. If I could push harder, stay stronger, resist longer, I'd finally change. But here's the truth most people don't want to admit. Willpower is weak when it stands alone. It fades under pressure. It collapses when life gets hard. And that's not because you're lazy. It's because you're human. Real transformation, it doesn't come from more force. It comes from more connection. Let that sink in for a moment. You don't change because you try harder. You change because you belong somewhere that reflects your future self loud, clear, and unapologetically. Think about this. When you surround yourself with people who smoke, your chance of quitting drops. But if your spouse or your close friend quits, suddenly your odds of quitting rise dramatically. Same body, same habit, same addiction. The difference, belonging. Why? Because identity is contagious. You begin to absorb the energy, patterns, and mindset of the people closest to you. Whether you notice it or not, you're becoming more like the people you sit next to, text most, and watch daily. You're not just practicing habits, you're inheriting identities. That's why willpower alone fails. Because when your environment doesn't match your intention, it starts to erode it. Let me give you an example. Years ago, I worked with someone who desperately wanted to quit drinking. He tried everything: motivational books, cold turkey, reward systems. But every Friday night, he went out with the same group of friends who didn't respect his decision, who pressured him just to have one, who teased him when he didn't join in. No matter how strong his willpower was, his environment always won. Eventually, I said to him, "You don't need more strength. You need new spaces." And when he found a community of people who valued wellness, growth, and real conversations, his behavior changed without force. He didn't need to fight temptation anymore because he no longer felt alone in his transformation. He wasn't forcing himself to become someone new. He was finally around people who already were. You've probably heard the quote, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." But I want to challenge you to take it one step deeper. You're the result of the identities you surround yourself with, not just habits, not just actions, but identities. Do the people around you embody the version of you that you're trying to become? Do they make you feel like changing is possible? Or do they remind you subtly or loudly of who you used to be? This isn't about judgment, it's about alignment. If you want to rise, you need people who speak to your evolution, not your excuses. People who normalize growth, not comfort. People who don't just accept your next chapter, but expect it. And look, I know what you're thinking. Jay, I can't just cut people off. These are my friends, my family, my people. I'm not asking you to cut them out. I'm asking you to build new circles around new goals. You can still love people. You can still honor your history with them. But if you're serious about becoming someone new, you need to plant yourself in soil that supports that version of you. You can't grow roses in cement. You need nutrients. You need light. You need space. And that comes from community. Let me tell you something I've learned about change. We're more consistent when we feel seen. We're more disciplined when we feel supported. We're more brave when we know someone has our back. If you've ever struggled to break a habit or build a new one, don't blame your willpower. Check your circle. Are you surrounded by people who speak life into your discipline? Or people who dismiss your dreams? Are you hanging around people who inspire your better self? Or people who keep dragging you back to your old self? Because this is what I've found to be true. You don't just need advice. You need alignment. You don't just need motivation. You need mirrors, people who reflect the person you're becoming. So what do you do if you feel stuck? What if you're ready to grow but don't have that kind of circle yet? Then you create it, even if it starts small, and read books by people you admire. Listen to podcasts that elevate your mindset. Like, follow people online who make your future self feel normal. Join communities, even virtual ones where people are obsessed with growth. Say yes to new rooms, new mentors, new groups that challenge your comfort. You don't have to meet your tribe in person to feel their presence. Sometimes the voices you allow into your mind matter just as much as the ones sitting beside you. You can borrow someone else's belief in you until yours catches up. Because here's the beautiful thing about identity: it's not fixed, it's fluid. It shifts when your environment shifts. Willpower is like trying to swim against the current. Belonging is like building a boat and rowing with the tide. When you're around the right people, you don't feel like you're changing. You feel like you're finally coming home to who you were always meant to be. That's the power of belonging. It turns behavior into identity and identity into transformation. So today, stop asking, how do I stay motivated? And start asking, who do I need to become and who do I need around me to support that? Because when you shift your circle, you shift your story. Belonging isn't soft, it's strategic. It's the secret weapon of every lasting transformation. You were never meant to do this alone. You were meant to rise together. Let me ask you something honest. When was the last time you felt completely drained? I'm not talking about tired because you ran a marathon or worked on something you love. I'm talking about the kind of tired that seeps into your soul, where you wake up still exhausted, where rest doesn't fix it, where every task feels like a burden, where your spark feels gone. Now, here's the twist. Most people think this is from working too much, but I've learned the real reason we burn out isn't because we're working too hard. It's because what we're doing feels empty. You don't burn out from effort. You burn out from doing things that lack meaning. And this isn't just philosophical, it's scientific. The world's leading researcher on burnout, Christina Maslach, identified the 3 root causes of true burnout. Exhaustion, yes, being physically and mentally drained. Cynicism, that creeping sense of detachment, of feeling like your work doesn't matter. Inefficacy, the belief that no matter what you do, nothing's really changing. If you've ever felt all 3 at once, you're not lazy. You're not broken. You're disconnected from meaning. I remember coaching a woman who worked at a fast-paced consulting firm. She clocked 70-hour weeks, back-to-back meetings, always on, but she loved it. She volunteered on weekends, ran marathons, still made time for her partner. She was thriving. Then she switched companies. Fewer hours, better pay, sans skillset. But within 6 months, she was completely burned out. Why? Because the new role didn't give her purpose. She became a cog in the machine. The impact wasn't clear. The work didn't matter to her heart, even if it made sense on paper. That's when I realized it's not the hours that drain us. It's the absence of purpose inside those hours. You see, humans can endure so much long days, difficult people, massive challenges, if they feel like it's for something. But when your life becomes a checklist of meaningless tasks, when you're living for deadlines instead of dreams, when you're surrounded by shoulds but starving for soul, that's when burnout kicks in. It's not the weight that breaks you down. It's carrying it without a reason. So many of us are living in performance mode, doing the job, checking the boxes, trying to meet expectations. But inside, we feel like strangers in our own story. And here's the scary part. You can be successful and burned out. You can be praised and feel purposeless. You can win the external game and lose the internal one. That's why I want to say this clearly. Your output is not a substitute for your fulfillment. Your paycheck is not proof that your life has meaning. Your grind is not the same as your growth. So if you're feeling depleted right now, I want to ask you something. Not how many hours are you working, but what are you working toward? What are you building that actually matters to you? Because without meaning, even rest won't recharge you. And with meaning, even the hardest work becomes a form of worship. Let me break this down even more simply. Working hard on something you love, that's passion. Working hard on something that matters, that's purpose. Working hard on something that drains you, that's a warning sign. So what's the difference? It's not the hours. It's how you feel when you're done. Do you feel empty or do you feel energized? Here's something I live by. Effort is sustainable, emptiness is not. And listen, I'm not saying every moment of your job has to be magical. We all have tasks we don't enjoy. Emails, admin, spreadsheets, meetings, but you need to have something anchoring it all. A reason, a why, a connection to something deeper. It might be the people you're helping, the skills you're developing, the version of yourself you're becoming through the process. And if your job doesn't give you that, then find meaning outside of work until you can bring it into your work. Volunteer, mentor, build something, teach, serve. You were not built to only get through the week and wait for Friday. You were built to matter, to contribute, to create. So many people think burnout means they need a break. And yes, sometimes that's true. But sometimes you don't need a break. You need a breakthrough, a deeper clarity, a re-anchoring of your identity, a return to your values. Because when you're working from the inside out, you stop counting hours and start counting impact. So what can you do today? Ask yourself, what part of my life feels most empty right now? Find one thing in your day that can bring meaning, even in a small way. Start saying no to what doesn't align, even if it looks good on the surface. And here's a practice I use every single week. At the end of each day, instead of asking, was I productive? I ask, did I do something meaningful today? It shifts everything, because at the end of your life, you won't remember the hours you worked. You'll remember the lives you touched, the relationships you built, the moments that mattered. You won't be proud of being busy. You'll be proud of being bold enough to pursue something real. So if you feel burned out, don't just rest. Reconnect. Reconnect with your values. Reconnect with your dreams. Reconnect with the person you were before the world told you to just survive. Because when your work is rooted in purpose, you don't just survive the pressure, you rise through it. Let me hit you with a hard truth. Your brain is lying to you about the future. Now, I don't mean it's trying to sabotage you. I don't mean it's evil. But it is wired to predict. And sometimes those predictions are completely wrong. We all think we're good at forecasting what will make us happy, what will break us, what we can or can't survive. I'll be happy when I finally get that promotion. I won't be able to handle it if this relationship ends. If I move to that city, then I'll feel fulfilled. If I fail this one thing, it's all over. But what if I told you almost everything you've been told about the future by your mind is distorted? What if the pain you think will last forever won't? What if the joy you imagine will solve everything doesn't? Let's break it down. There's a term in psychology, affective forecasting error. It's our brain's inability to accurately predict how future events will impact our emotions. Daniel Gilbert, a Harvard psychologist, ran a study on lottery winners. They assumed winning would skyrocket their happiness long term. Guess what? A year later, their happiness levels barely changed. Some even dropped. Then he studied people who experienced tragic accidents, paralysis, major loss. Everyone expected lifelong misery. And yet, a year later, their happiness levels had rebounded. Why? Because both pleasure and pain fade faster than we expect. We imagine peaks and valleys that last forever. But the reality, we adapt. You've probably experienced this in your own life. Remember that relationship you thought you'd never get over? You did. Remember that job you were terrified to leave? You found better. Remember that moment you were convinced would ruin you? It didn't. You're still here. You're still breathing. You're still becoming, because the mind exaggerates. It tells you this will be amazing forever, or this pain will never end. And both are false. Here's how this works. Your brain is trying to keep you safe. It wants certainty. So it paints dramatic pictures of the future to steer your decisions. But those pictures are often illusions. And when you believe them, you either chase fantasy or avoid growth. Let me explain. We chase fantasy when we believe certain outcomes will finally fix us. the new car, the bigger house, the dream job, the perfect partner. But once we get them, the thrill fades. Why? Because we've changed the external, but not the internal. We haven't updated our values, our mindset, our daily habits. And so the joy disappears. On the flip side, we avoid growth because our brain tells us if you fail, you'll never recover. If they leave, you'll be broken. If it doesn't go perfectly, you'll be ruined. And so we stay stuck. But here's what I want you to understand. Your brain can't predict your future as well as your actions can create it. Let me say that again. Your thoughts about the future are not facts. Your choices create your future, not your fears. So what do? We test reality instead of trusting fantasy. Instead of saying, I'll be happy if I move to another city. Try spending a weekend there, walk the streets, feel the vibe, then decide. Instead of saying, I know I'll be miserable if I quit my job, talk to someone who's done it, shadow a new career, get curious, because imagination inflates, reality educates. You can dream forever in your head, but clarity comes from trying. One of the most powerful tools I use with people is a simple question. What is your mind telling you about this future and what's actually true? Because often what we're afraid of isn't real. It's a mental movie. Let's say you're afraid of rejection. Your brain says, if I put myself out there, if I launch that business, share that idea, or open up in love, people will reject me and I'll never recover. But what's actually true? Some people might reject you, but others won't. And more importantly, you'll be okay. You don't need to believe every fearful forecast. You just need to remember that you've survived every storm so far. Here's what else happens when you realize your brain lies. You stop making permanent decisions based on temporary emotions. You stop idolizing outcomes. You stop catastrophizing change. And instead, you start living. Because the moment you stop letting your fears write your future, you reclaim your power to build it. Now, let's make this practical. Catch your forecasts. Write down what your brain is predicting about a decision you're afraid to make. Challenge the distortion. Ask, what evidence do I have that this will actually happen? What happened the last time I felt this way? Test it. Don't trust it. Don't make massive decisions based on mental drama. Take small steps. Run micro experiments. Reality will tell you more than worry ever will. And remember this. Your brain might say, you'll never make it. You're not ready. You'll regret this. But the part of you that's wiser, the part of you that's watching your thoughts instead of drowning in them, that's the real you, the future builder, not just the future predictor. So yes, your brain will lie about the future, but your actions will tell you the truth. Your courage will reveal what's possible. Your willingness to step forward, even through doubt, is the proof that your best days aren't behind you, they're waiting. And the next time your mind says, this is going to be awful, or this will never work, you get to say, that's just a forecast. And I choose to find out for myself. Because life isn't meant to be lived in your imagination. It's meant to be tested in reality, stepped into with faith, built with intention, experienced with presence. The truth is, things are never as good as we imagine. Things are never as bad as we fear. But if you stay grounded in meaning, anchored in purpose, and committed to growth, you'll always find your way. The future isn't something to fear. It's something to form. One decision, one moment, one brave step at a time. And you've already come this far. You're not done yet.